Hi guys. My question is, does a flipped classroom increase student readiness? A little bit of background about me. I've been flipping lectures for over a year now in a proficiency-based classroom. I do this mostly in advanced biology, which is a fairly homogeneous class. And I think that flipping the classroom works best in conjunction with common formative assessments right after the students arrive. And collaboration between class members. So I think it's really important for the students to have a chance to talk about what they saw on the video and not just jump right into performing a lab. The method for this research started with this hypothesis that if flipped lectures and collaboration increased student readiness, I predicted about 60% of students or greater would be prepared as measured by 75% or greater correct responses on some questions. I picked 60% because I think, traditionally on average you get about 50% of homework completion in general biology classes. I think some of it is copied, and so sometimes you get a little bit greater scores, sometimes life is busy and you get a little bit less. But I thought if we could get 60% of students ready at 75% or greater of standardized questions, that would be pretty great. I also thought that I'm working in a traditional biology classroom. I flipped the lectures so that students would watch a lecture at home and then with notes, and then they would come back to class and do a review sheet with their peers, and then followed up by an individual formative assessment. So let me show you what that looks like. Students would go to the website and pick the correct video for the day. The videos range from 6 to 10 minutes, and they've been created a year ago, sometimes recently. Sometimes they're practice of a skill. And they complete some notes with these. And then after completing the notes with their peers, they would use the laptops to create or to complete a quiz, or what we call a warm-up. These have discrete question types that have a correct answer. They have open-ended questions. And then the second half of the quiz is, a little bit about their experience. Did they watch it? How many times did they rewatch it? And did they find the reviews helpful in class, or the videos to be helpful? Some of the limitations to this study was that I'm not in the classroom right now, so I'm trying to work with other teachers and their time constraints, and they've been very generous. There's always such limited amount of time to really look at the data that you get from the formative assessments. So there was really no time during these days in the classroom to stop, look at that information, and change what we had planned for the day. I would have really loved a general biology comparison that continued the traditional model of reading and completing those review sheets at home and seeing how ready they were at the start of class. And then, we don't know what the readiness is when students do that traditional model. Just because they complete their homework, does that mean that they are ready with 75% correct responses on the quizzes or warm-ups? Or, are they less ready or more ready? So we don't have a baseline for that yet either. I'm going to skip through this in the interest of time. So some of my results were that, watching increased over the course, but not steadily. It kind of, shot up and then went back down. But definitely from the first video to the last video, more students were watching. Never got 100%. And then the students who watched sometimes performed better. And I'm not sure if this margin, and I'll show it to you in a second, really is significant. We need to have a bigger sample size to determine that. And I also think that teachers are still needed to check in for understanding and adjust. So during that review sheet time or after the common formative assessment is completed, teachers are still really necessary. The video is not enough. Let's take a look at what this looked like. So this is percent of students who watched and percent that met. These are not necessarily the same students. So in the first quiz and homework assignment I gave of 3, they watched the lecture at home, only 10% watched the lecture at home, but 86% met. And I think that's because this skill set and content is kind of an extension of something they've learned previous, so that's not super surprising. This percent watch, so now we have a much greater percent watching on the second lecture, but less students meeting the quiz because it's, newer, more difficult skills. And then, students watching on the third lecture and skill set, and then, only 18% meeting when they come to class. So this is clearly below the 60% I had hoped for. Let's compare readiness between watchers and non-watchers. Not as significant as I predicted. You had, of the non-watcher group, you had 74% of them meet versus 86% of the watchers meet. This is repeating skills again, so not as difficult content, but this I found shocking. Protein synthesis is very difficult for students to understand, and for 63% of the non-watchers to meet, I don't have an explanation for that. I think that is really curious, and I would want to see what this looks like in a bigger sample size, what it looks like. I really have no response for that. And then mutations, you see that the watchers performed a little bit better, which is, I expected everything to look like this. On my reflections, like I said, we need a larger sample size with more teachers having both a control and an experimental group. I'd like to tweak the question a little bit to, come up with a better marker for readiness. And then I think, there's still a lot of discussion about how important are the lectures to understanding class content. How can we make sure that students are watching the lectures when we think it's absolutely necessary? And then, how are teachers keeping the material really engaging so that students want to watch the lectures? One accountability piece I really want to investigate further is how to have some kind of check-in system to make sure that your students have watched lectures when you think it's really, really important. So if any of you guys have found a system like that, let me know. Thanks a lot.